Hey guys, Laura with Garden Answer. Today I want to show you how to clean up a flower bed and get it ready for spring, and I'm going to show it to you in 4 steps. I actually had to step back and think, how do I actually clean up a flower bed? I do it so often and it seems so ingrained that I really had to think what process I actually go through to get it done. It's not hard, it's really easy actually. So I'll share all the steps with you. You might remember this area from last year. We did a little makeover project where I put all these plants in. If you haven't checked out that video, we will link it down below so you can go check it out. So the first thing you want to do is assess and trim back your plants accordingly. You don't treat all plants the same. Even if you have a bed full of perennials, those perennials might need a little bit of different treatment. So the best way to know what your plants need is when you're at the garden center buying your plants, make sure to read the tag. You should be looking at it anyway to make sure that the plant is a good fit for where you're going to be putting it. Oftentimes you can find pruning and trimming back information on the tag. If it's not there, ask somebody at the garden center and they should be able to let you know. And if all else fails, you can always Google the plant and you can find care instructions. So what I've got in this bed, I'm going to start in the back here, is an ornamental grass. This is Desert Plains Pennisetum. Ornamental grass, most of them need to be cut back to the ground every season. And a little tip on doing that, I like to gather them up in a bunch and tie a piece of just garden twine around it so that when I cut it down, it comes off all in one piece instead of just scattering everywhere. So it's a little bit cleaner. The second plant I'm going to be tackling are these Rock and Grow Maestrosetums. You can already see new growth coming. They look beautiful and healthy, but you can see last year's growth. So what I'm going to do is take my pruners and gently cut the last year's growth off at the base and remove it. Next layer down are daisies, which are an amazing daisy. I'm excited to see them grow this year. They have huge blooms, they stay shorter than traditional daisies, and they don't spread like crazy. They all look very healthy. You can see new fresh leaves. So what I'll do is just clean up any stragglers from last year. You can see little branches and things that just need to be cut back and cleaned up. Then I've got some fruit punch dianthus. So this is where it comes in that the perennials might be different. So you've got a sedum that you've got to cut all the way down to the bottom, and then you've got these dianthus that are a semi-evergreen to evergreen in their foliage, and they're coming out of winter looking just like this. Like, I don't even need to touch them. Talk about a low maintenance perennial. They look beautiful all season long with that really icy blue foliage. I'm just going to leave those alone. The last thing in this bed I want to talk about is this Anna's Magic Ball arborvitae. You can tell that it did not handle the snow load very well. It's a little bit pushed down. I mean, our snow was about up to here this winter, and it was just too much weight on these little fragile branches. The reason why I used this one is because it's a dwarf type of evergreen that you can tuck into a flower bed, and it's just a really pretty accent. So what I'm going to do is just fertilize it and give it 1 year. I'll give it 1 year to bounce back and see if it kind of recovers its shape a little bit. If it doesn't, I will probably remove it and put something else in here. If it bounces, then it can stay. And one other thing that I almost forgot about was all the bulbs I planted in here. And I planted, I can't even remember how many, but they're Mount Tacoma tulips. They're a beautiful white tulip, and you can see them coming up all right here. There's a drift of them right back in there, and there's a few here. So I'm going to have to be a little careful when I'm tromping around in here. The next step is to weed and rake. Basically just clean up everything else in the bed. So I did notice a little bit of grass that was creeping in on the edge of the bed. Noticed a few buttonweeds in there, so I'll go in and clean those up first. And I like to weed by hand because I like to make sure I get the roots. And then when I'm done with that, I will rake. And I'm just gonna use my adjustable rake. You want to make sure you use one that has flexible tines so that it won't rip up your plants. You wouldn't want to use like a big plastic leaf rake. The next step is fertilizing, and just like you had to assess your plants as to whether or not they need to be trimmed back, you also need to get to know your plants a little bit and figure out what kind of fertilization they need, or if they like to be fertilized at all. And I've got kind of a mix of plants going on in here. I have my arborvitae, I have perennials. I also have one butterfly bush in there that I forgot to mention earlier. So I'm going to be using a couple different kinds of fertilizer. First of all, for the arborvitae, that's a more of an acid-loving plant. Evergreens tend to like an acidic fertilizer. So I'm going to be using Hollytone on that one. And then for everything else, I'm going going to be using plant tone. The only plant I'm actually not going to be fertilizing are the sedums. So sedums thrive on neglect. They do not like to be fertilized. They don't like to be messed with. In fact, if you fertilize them or if they get too much fertilizer, they tend to flop. So I'll be skipping that plant altogether. And for each one of these plants, I'm just going to be following the instructions that you can find on the back of the bag. The last step is to mulch, and mulching is really important to me for really 3 reasons. The first one is that it helps to keep weeds down. The second is that it helps keep moisture in the soil. It helps keep the plant's roots cool, especially when it gets warm outside in the summertime. And the third reason is because it makes it look pretty. So I did mulch this area last year. It's looking pretty good still, so I'm not going to have to fully mulch the area. I'm just going to touch it up in areas where it looks like it's settled, where I can now see, you know, a few irrigation tubes kind of sticking out. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to touch it up. So that's it, you guys. That is how to clean out your flower beds in 4 easy steps. So let me go over the steps one more time. First one is to assess and trim back your plants accordingly. Number 2 is to rake and weed. Number 3 is to fertilize. And number 4 is to mulch. And that is all there is to it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you in the next video. Bye.